Hi, let us now see how to size the elements in a flex box. So by default, let us assume that we have 4 paragraphs. You know that paragraph is a block element. So the entire block or the entire row is taken up by each paragraph: home, about, contact us, and the best programming school in the world. All these are paragraphs and they have taken the entire width because they are block elements. Now when you put them in a grid, they will look something like this. Okay, now how is the size of each one fixed? That is the question. How is the size of each item in the flex fixed? So that actually depends on the content in the item, and flexbox is going to do what will be looking good in most of the cases. So when you leave flexbox and leave everything to flexbox, it has some default settings and it is going to display the content in a way that it is good for many in many cases it is good. Okay, sometimes what happens is you might not want this to happen and you might want to resize the elements in the flexbox on yourself, not following the default settings. Okay, so then you can follow all this. One is, if you don't specify anything, then the content width is going to automatically take the maximum, or content width is going to be taken, which means if you have a longest line, it will try to put that longest line and it will try to get the maximum width, and then the minimum width is going to be the longest word inside it. Okay, for example, here the longest word in this paragraph is programming, so it will set the minimum width to that amount, and when you try to when you try to decrease the size of the window, it will go till the point where it can fit programming as in one row. If that is not possible, the element will disappear from the screen. So if you don't specify anything, our flexbox is going to take its own settings, which is content width. Based on the content width, it will decide how big the element should be, and when you shrink it, how small it should be. It will decide based on the content. Otherwise, you can also use width property. If you use the width property, then you can specify the width, and then we also have seen flex basis. So flex basis is going to act as the width sometimes and act as the height sometimes. If it is a row direction, then it is going to act as width. If it is column direction, flex box, then it is going to act as height. Similarly, you can also specify what is the minimum width and what is the maximum width. When you specify minimum width, then each element is going to at least have that width, and if there is more space available, it will grow further. If you specify maximum width, then your element is not going to grow beyond that maximum width. Now you can use all this. Now why I have given less than is highest priority is given to min max width, and the next highest priority is given to flex basis, and the next one is given to width, and the next one is given to content width. Okay, so if you specify min max, all of these are overridden. Okay, there are some cases which we will see. So initially, let us say our grid is our flex box is looking like this. Now if you shrink it, it is going to shrink to a point where it is going to fit programming, and if you go beyond that, the element is going to disappear. So shrinking point is still here, till everything becomes like this, and then programming becomes the only word of the longest length, and it can be displayed. If you even shrink it further, the element will disappear. Okay, now you can also specify the width of an item by selecting that item. If you want one particular item to be of longer width, then you can specify that by selecting the item. Selecting that item by using whatever class it is present in. In this example, I have taken dot item, assuming that item is the class in which an element is present. And if you write 100 pixel, so it is going to give that 100 pixel width for that particular item. And if you select 100 pixel to all the items, then all the items are going to get 100 pixels. Okay. And again, if you try to shrink it, it is going to come to the point where programming can fit. Otherwise, the element is going to disappear. And now if you give both of them, if you give the width as well as flex basis, I have shown you here that flex basis has higher priority compared to width. Okay, so flex basis of 200 will be taken, which means all of them will be of 200 pixel width. If you give both of them, flex basis will win and this will be overwritten, width will be overwritten. Okay. And how does the max width and min width be decided automatically is depending on the content. It will take the longest line and it will try to fit it in the row. If it is not possible, it will try to cut the line into many parts, but it will try to fit the longest line if possible. And the minimum is here. The longest word is going to be the minimum. And then when you have max width and flex given, so what does max width mean? Max width means that whatever the size of the screen is, even if there is space, you should not go beyond that. That is the max width. But max width is going to conflict with the flex basis. Now if both of them are given, then whatever is the minimum, it will take that minimum value, which means 100 pixel in this case. Therefore, all these elements will be of 100 pixel. Okay, so maximum width means you should not go beyond that, even if there is space here. That is the meaning of it. Okay, here it will take 100 pixel as the maximum width. And if the flex is smaller, if the flex is 50 pixel, then flex basis, then 50 pixel will be taken. And similarly, what is min width is what should be the minimum width of the particular item. So if I say, don't look at this example for now, don't look at this one. Let us say flex basis is not given and min width is given. Min width is given as 100. What it means is all the elements should have minimum width of 100, but if there is more space remaining, these elements are going to expand, which means minimum is given as 100, maximum can be to the entire length of it. Okay, and if flex basis and min width both are given, if the flex basis is given and min width is given, then maximum of these two will be taken. Whatever is the maximum of these two values, that will be taken, and that will be the min width. Okay, thank you. Hi, let's look at Grid, CSS Grid. So Grid is a very powerful tool in order to design 2D layouts. If you have to lay out something in a 2D, for example, you have seen Flex. Flex is a 1D layout tool. So basically when you use Flexbox, you are going to put everything either in one row or in one column, and it is going to do a lot of things on that row and column. But coming to Grid, it can be like this. So there can be an element here, there can be an element here, there can be an element here, like this. There can be many elements laid out in a very different, any way that you want. Okay, so you can achieve anything that you want. Now the question is, Grid looks more powerful than Flex. If Grid is going to do 2D layouts, then it will be able to do 1D layouts also. Then why did you teach Flex at all? So it is not like that. It is not like which one is better. Generally what happens is at practice both of them are used in combination along with Bootstrap. That is how you get beautiful websites. It is not like we are going to use only Grid. So inside a Grid, so this is 2D layout and that is 3D layout, 1D layout. So inside a Grid, there can be a flex. So if you look at this, this is a flex box. This flex box is inside the Grid now. Okay, so you can have like this flex box inside the Grid or Grid inside a flex box. You can have that also. So a combination of it is used. Now, for example, let us say there is a container div and inside that there are 4 paragraphs. Okay, now how do you create grid is you write display grid to the container. Whatever the container is, you write display grid to the container, and then you specify how many columns and how many rows are there by using grid template column or grid template rows. Okay. Now, what is FR? FR means fraction. So it means that there are two columns in it, and one column is 1/3 and the second column is 2/3, because 1 plus 2 is 3. So first column is going to take 1/3 of the area, second column is going to take 2/3 of the area. And then there are two rows, and to both the rows are one fraction and one fraction, which means first one is both are equally divided. So let's see what we get. We get something like this. Okay. Now if you look at the first column, this is one fraction, and if you look at the second column, this is two fraction. And then if you look at the rows, so this is one fraction and one fraction. Rows are one fraction and one fraction, and gap is given for 10 pixel. So you can see that there is some gap here, that is 10 pixel gap. Okay. Now let us try to use, or let me show you what is the difference between grid and flex. You will see how. Yeah, so now let us say this one is done using grid and this one is done using flex. Okay, now let's try to shrink it. So instead of directly drag it, so this is how it is looking. Now if I shrink it, now you can see that both of them are shrinking. So both of them are responsive. Both of them are actually responsive based on the width it is shrinking. But if you look at the flex box and grid is perfectly aligned. All the rows and columns are actually in one order. But in coming to flex, it is not aligned like that. Okay. So depending on what you want, you can choose. It is not that flex box is inferior. Both of them are used in combination. Okay. Now let's see, let's build a chessboard using grid. So in a chessboard, there are going to be 64 boxes, 8 by 8. For all the boxes, I have written all the divs, right? One box is given a label of a class of black, other box is given a class of white, and all these are present in the div, outermost div, with a class container. Therefore, container contains now all these divs. Now let's try to see how they look like. Let's try to inspect. You will not see anything because divs doesn't have by default it doesn't have any boxes. I mean, it doesn't show any border or it doesn't show any color. So let's do one thing. Let's select them and give them the sizes and the borders or the colors. So we are selecting all the white divs and we are giving them height of 200 pixel and width of 200 pixel. Sorry, 100, height of 100 pixel and width of 100 pixel. And then the background color for white, you can give it white or you can give any other color that you want. Generally these days, the chessboards are not white and black. They are of different colors also, like brown, light brown, like that. And then the height of black is 100 pixel and the width of black is 100 pixel. And let's give background color of black. Okay, now you can see that there is a white, there is a black, and all of them are one below the other. Now let's take the container and let's put everything in a grid. Let's apply this to the class container. Let's apply display grid. And then we have to give rows and columns. So let's give 8 columns. Grid templates columns equal to 8. So all the 8s should be of the same size. So that is why we are giving 1 fraction, so on 8 times. There is a shortcut to do this. You can write 8 comma 1 FR. You can do that, but later we will see that. Okay. Now if you see it, it will already be aligned because 8 columns are created. So just pull it. So it is already aligned, okay, without giving rows also, but still let's give rows. So actually chessboard is too big to fit here. Let's give 50-50 instead of having 100-100 height and width. Let's give 50-50. And let's see that. Yeah, it looks like it is fitting in the board. Let's pull it and see what happens. I think white and white background are mixing up on the screen. Give wheat for white instead of white. Give wheat for white. Yeah, now the board is clear. But then if you observe it, when I am pulling it, there is space created in between. Okay, it is automatically filling it for the responsiveness. Now let's try to give the size of the container as 8 5 is 400, right? So width as 400 and height as 400. Let's limit the size of the container. Then this will not happen. When I pull it, let's pull it now. Yeah, now it is perfectly fitting in this space and it is not happening. Okay, thank you.